Welcome into the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by my friend and co-host, Mehrob Fatemi over there. We have a lot to get into. NFL training camp, every single team, that's right, all 32 teams have officially reported as of today, which means football is here. We made it through the offseason. Exciting 44 days until NFL kickoff, but it's not all roses, it's not all daisies over there in the world of football. There are plenty of controversies, plenty of holdouts, plenty of hold-ins, and that's where we're going to start off today here, Mehrob. We're going to start off with probably the biggest news in sports today. What's going on in Cincinnati? Cincinnati has been an ongoing story that we've been following really all offseason long. Started with Trey Hendrickson wanting his contract, transferred over to Shamar Stewart, still the only first-round pick not signed. There's only 2 picks in the entire draft that have not been signed, one being Shamar Stewart, the other being Quinshon Judkins, who, of course, with his legal situation, is going to be a little bit longer in terms of signing. But we had a whole stretch where second-rounders weren't signing. They've all basically signed at this point. But Cincinnati is doing its own thing. And this is not the position that they really have the ability to deal with this issue, right? Historically bad defense last year from the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals had Joe Burrow putting up MVP-level numbers, Jamar Chase putting up a wide receiver triple crown season, offensive player of the year level numbers over there, a breakout season from a running back in Chase Brown, T. Higgins doing his thing, a legit wide receiver 1-2-ish kind of guy over there, and yet they missed the playoffs. The defense was that bad. They say, instead of fixing the problem, Sam Hubbard retires. Now they can't sign Trey Hendrickson because they just won't negotiate with him. And Shamar Stewart, they are digging their heels in on a kid that has said nothing but good things about his character on a clause that is not necessarily the worst clause to throw into a contract. You get thrown in jail, we don't have to pay you money. Is very simply, it's how Mike Brown described it, and I think it's a little bit less, stringent than that. But there are a lot of issues with this Cincinnati Bengals team in a position and a place that they really can't handle these issues being in. So again, Mehrob, I pose the question to you, what is going on in Cincinnati?
Yeah, Jeremy, Cincinnati is a mess. And unfortunately, we're not going to start this show on a good note. We got to talk about this stuff, but it's the world of sports here. Cincinnati is an absolute mess right now. The offense, don't get me wrong, it's sunshine and roses. You got an amazing young running back. You got Jamar Chase. You bring T. Higgins back. You signed him to an extension mid-season last year. You obviously have MVP level Joe Burrow out there, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. This is a Bengals team that can score 40 points whenever they want. But this is a Bengals team that can also give up 40 points whenever it wants. That was the issue last year, and that was a big reason why they did not make the playoffs. That was a big reason why they struggled in not only the early part of the season, but throughout the season in general. A lot of this team's issues come on the defensive end of the ball. You give up a lot of big pieces, give up Eric Hendrickson this offseason, and now you're having issues with Shamar Stewart. When you're looking at this team from top to down, you may have an unbelievable offense, but with that defense as porous as it is, your offense is not going to score on every single possession, and that is what the Bengals are relying on this year. You might win some games. You might win 6-7 games here, but it's not enough to make the playoffs. And if you're a Bengals fan, you have a lot to worry about in Cincinnati.
See, I'm curious how far you're willing to take this, because this is the kind of line of thinking that a lot of people have, right? This line of thinking that we saw what this Bengals team was last year. They've done nothing to really persuade at least me that they're going to be any different at all. Because that offense was, especially down the stretch, about as good as you possibly could expect an offense to be. But the defense continues to have struggles. They historically struggle early on in the season, to which Zach Taylor said he's going to play Joe Burrow in the preseason to try and get those slow starts out of the way. And it seemed to have convinced a bunch of people, right? You see them go out and fix that offense, or I guess keep that offense together, signing T. Higgins and Jamar Chase this offseason. Still having Joe Burrow with all the potential that he has to be a top 4 quarterback in the NFL, no doubt about it in my mind. But what's different about this team from last year? What are people seeing that I am not, that is convincing them that this is a sleeper playoff team? This is one of those teams that's going to come and take a spot away from a playoff team last year. What is it? Are they saying that this offense is going to be better? Because I can't imagine this offense is better than it is last year. And that defense, unless there's some crazy guy that comes out of nowhere, this is a much worse defense than it was last year. I just don't see a path to success for the Bengals this season without bringing in one of, if not both, Shamar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, that's the truth. And honestly, Eric Hendrickson's pretty much long gone, if you're asking me. It's been almost 2 months since he hit free agency, and there's been no movement with him. There's been nothing going on with him. Um, I really think I I could say that Zach Taylor's trying to save his job. I could say that Zach Taylor's out there because this is a guy in Zach Taylor that's already been on the hot seat for the last 2 years or so now. There were people calling for his job last season. They kept him for an extra year. I'm not really too sure where you go from here if you're the Bengals. You really need somebody to come out and you need a star player to show up out of nowhere. You need something to come out of absolute nowhere. Or you need Joe Burrow to put up 8,000 passing yards, 10,000 passing yards in a season. Jamar Chase to go off for 2,000, T. Higgins for another 1,000, Chase Brown 1,000-yard rushing season, and they score 60 points a game and win the Super Bowl. Like, seriously, that's what you're going to need if you're the Bengals this year to make the playoffs, to make any noise. If you're asking me, if you're asking me for any type of prediction, this is the team that's already playing in a white hot. Jesus Christ, I can't talk today. White hot division in the AFC North. So you can't really. You're already playing four teams twice a year that are pretty tough. You're not looking at many wins if you're the Bengals. So Zach Taylor's in a tough spot. That defense is in a tough spot, and the entire team is in a tough spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about that. But let's dig a little bit deeper into these holdout and hold-ins, not just in Cincinnati, but just in general around the league. We'll start in Cincinnati since that's where we already are. Trey Hendrickson is in Florida. He's in Florida. That's how bad this situation is. He posts on his story a picture of him being halfway across the country back in his home state. And who wouldn't want to be in Florida when they would otherwise be in Ohio? But this is saying, and he's been in Cincinnati. He was in Cincinnati answering questions from the media during voluntary camp that took place about a month ago, right? He was there. We were getting quotes. We were getting media appearances, and they have not come any closer to a deal. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, starting off with Trey Hendrickson, you have severed the relationship of a guy that had the most sacks in the NFL last season, was the sack leader last year in the NFL. And we've seen Max Crosby, we've seen Myles Garrett, we've seen TJ Watt all get paid this offseason. And it was the same thing. The more you sit in the hands, especially with a cheap owner, you're going to have to open the wallet even wider than you would have if you just paid somebody right away. Now, Trey Hendrickson, I understand the concerns. He's not really the same level of guy as Myles Garrett, as TJ Watt, as a Max Crosby, but that's not to say he's a bad player at all. He's a guy that deserves to be paid top 5 defensive end money. I just don't know if he's really a guy that deserves $42 million a year, which is kind of what we're looking at. Micah Parsons maybe even gets his deal done before then. But the other side of the coin, if you're the Bengals, you say, we're just not really willing to pay you this money. Why haven't you traded him? There has been a disturbing lack of a buzz on a trade market for Trey Hendrickson. I could go off and list a whole bunch of teams that I'm sure would love to have the services of Trey Hendrickson. You talk about a team like the Packers that if they had a pass rush would be in another tier of contention. The Commanders, they could use a great pass rusher off the edge. They just bring in Von Miller, but you get another veteran over there to play every down while Von Miller is more of a third down kind of guy. Those are two teams right off the dome. You also have a team like the Bills. I know that's in conference, so it's a little bit less likely, but these are all teams that desperately need pass rush. Pass rush is the second most important position in the NFL behind quarterback. there is going to be a market for him. A guy that led the leagues in sacks last season. And I don't know about you, Mehrob, but I have yet to hear any more than a whisper about the potential of him getting traded. I don't understand what Mike Brown and the Bengals are doing, because if you aren't going to open up the pocketbook and sign him, you need to be looking at a partner to get him off the books and get something back in return.
Yeah, I mean, why would you I'm right there with you. What's the point of having such great talent on your team, a guy that's so valuable at his position, that you would just let walk for no value? You get nothing back from him. It makes absolutely no sense. So I'm right there with you, Jeremy. It makes absolutely no sense. If I'm the Bengals, I've already been calling people. But even then, you haven't heard a single whisper of a rumor that's been going around about the Bengals looking to trade him. So I'm not sure if they're waiting for Trey Hendrickson's price to go down, thinking that nobody's interested in him. I promise you, the second Trey Hendrickson says I'm done, he's already requested a trade. But the second he gets signed anywhere, Bengals fans are not only Bengals fans are going to go up in an uproar. The Bengals ownership is just going to probably fire Zach Taylor on the spot or something of that nature. Something drastic is going to happen like that. I know you're laughing, but like seriously, something's going to happen in Cincinnati. It's the truth. How can you let somebody of that caliber walk without getting any value back? It makes absolutely no sense.
It's not just that. And to your point, absolutely. Something drastic is going to happen in Cincinnati if this season goes south. I truly do believe Zach Wilson is maybe not Zach Taylor, excuse me, is on maybe the second hottest seat out of any coach in the NFL, only behind Brian Dable up in New York over there. But he's not the only holdout. Trey Hendrickson is with the Bengals. The guy that they drafted to be their replacement, Shamar Stewart, also holding out. He's been back at college with Texas A&M staying in shape is the story over there, but his is a little bit more cut and dry. It's a single clause in that contract that the Bengals are trying to insert as a precedent, basically saying if you do anything, as they wrote in the contract, conduct detrimental to football, conduct detrimental to the team, we don't have to pay you any of the guaranteed money. And to a certain extent, I understand where they're coming from, especially from an organization that is as cash strapped, which is a crazy thing to say about a NFL team, as the Bengals are, but they are historically cheap. But again, pairing that with Trey Hendrickson's situation, you can't have both of these going on at the same time. It's a clashing of two ideas. You have the replacement and the guy, but neither one of them are happy. I don't understand why they decided now was a time to do the precedent. I understand with a guy, you've seen it all the time around the league with these receivers, especially recently, these young receivers driving too fast and getting into trouble, right? It's Jordan Addison, Henry Rugg, all these guys, Rashee Rice, right? Very recently in the news for not great situation. Quinshon Judkins, we just finished talking about him. I understand where you're coming from. You don't want to pay a guy that's not going to be able to help you, but that's never been a thing in sports. It's never been a thing in the NFL, especially. And to start it with the precedent with a guy like Shamar Stewart that's had nothing but positive character notes about him makes no sense. And I understand if you're Shamar Stewart, why me? Why am I the first one to get this? Why do you think I'm going to go to jail? Why do you think this is an issue for me? This is not how I want to be treated going into the organization. So I kind of understand from both sides. But if I was in Shamar's situation, I would not sign that contract either. That is just insulting to me, if I'm being completely honest. They need to pick a lane. And right now, they are choosing to go the opposite direction on the highway. It's not good. They need to figure out at least one of these guys, and soon. I just don't understand what's going on in Cincy. I really don't.
Absolutely. The last word I want to put about this is Diana Rossini, a journalist for The Athletic, just talked to Hendrickson a couple days ago. He's literally said, I was more than willing to take less in some ways in order to make this work. He's had 2 offers in the past 24 hours, and none of the guarantees have made it past the first year of the contract. It seems like a money problem. It literally seems like a guaranteed money issue that he just wants to get paid his worth, and the Bengals are just refusing to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. But like we said, there's a lot of other holdout situations going on. We've talked about a lot of them, but we're going to do updates now that the NFL training camp is actually here. One of the other major actual holdouts going on is in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where Terry McLaurin, the star wide receiver for the Commanders and wide receiver one for that team, has yet to report to camp. He is on the reserve holdout list right now. Washington has placed him on. He is in Virginia. He was spotted doing yoga earlier today. So he is in the area and they're having contract discussions. This one is a lot more civil. It's still not great. It's not good that the face of the Commanders during the bad years in Terry McLaurin is not being treated as he thinks he should be. But I also understand, again, from the organization perspective, this is a guy that's going into his age 30 season. You don't necessarily want to commit too much money, but if there is a guy that deserves to be overpaid a little bit in this league by that team, it is Terry McLaurin. You have to take care of your guys. I have faith that this is going to get taken care of, but as time continues to go on, and I really thought it was going to get taken care of before they reported for training camp, it starts to get a little bit of, I don't know what's going on here, because Terry, very good wide receiver, and the Commanders are going to need him if they're going to be successful. What's your reading on this situation over in DC?
Yeah, the Commanders need to figure it out with Terry McLaurin. This is a guy in Terry McLaurin that we've talked about multiple times on the show recently. A lifelong Commander, a guy that's been there from the beginning in the dog days of the Commanders when they had RG3, when he made that spectacular catch in the end zone with one hand, falling into the end zone in the bottom left corner of the end zone. All around, this is a guy that's been there for the last 7-8 years, and that just deserves his money. He deserves a place on the team that he wants to just feel his worth. He wants to feel like he's been worth it. He's worth it in the franchise. And in an offensive standpoint, he's an incredible deep threat for Jaden Daniels to just throw it up. He's to throw it 50 yards down the field. He's an incredible deep threat to just take the top off the defense, and it makes it so much easier for the offense to get to flow. When we're looking at Terry McLaurin, he's already a top 10, top 15 receiver, no doubt in the league right now, I'd say. And I mean, you can't really his worth is he's so important to this team. You saw in the divisional round against the Lions what he did in the playoffs. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. A spectacular play all around. So Terry McLaurin is incredibly important to this Washington Commanders team, and I've said it before too. You need to pay him. You need to stop thinking about the money for Jaden Daniels moving forward, and you just need to pay Terry McLaurin the money that he's worth.
Yeah, and I expect them to, honestly. This is not a situation like the Bengals where I think it's going to cause an actual issue. I think Terry McLaurin will get paid eventually, but as the timeline keeps ticking, as the clock gets closer and closer and closer to the start of the NFL season, not only is it bad for the relationship between these two parties, but it's also just not great for the product that's going to be put on the field, right? You want your guys to be out there practicing, being on the same page. And I think him and Jaden Daniels have a good enough connection that it will be okay. Jaden Daniels said it'll be okay when he eventually gets on the field. But the longer it takes, the less hospitable it's going to be, and the less chemistry that these guys are going to be able to build, not just with each other, but with the new guys entering the building. Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin, I'm sure, haven't had a lot of time to get to know each other, their tendencies on the field, how they want to do certain things, because they're going to have to work together on that team, right? There's a lot of X's and O's that need to be figured out, and the only way to do that is to be on the same field together practicing. Hopefully this gets taken care of soon. That wraps up all the holdouts, but there are also a couple hold-ins to keep an eye on. Notably, James Cook, the running back for the Buffalo Bills, is looking for a new contract. It's yet to be seen how much he's going to practice, but he is in Buffalo. He is a guy that's looking to reset the running back market. I think he's a borderline top 10 running back in the league right now. Someone that I put near that number 10 spot, and I understand if you wanted to put him in there. But he also is a guy that hasn't really been able to handle a full workload on his own. So paying him like a premier back might not be the greatest decision for the Bills over there. I don't think he gets paid this offseason. I really don't. I think he comes in and plays, and then he'll get paid next season, whether that's with the Bills or somebody else. But with running backs, it's always tough. You've seen the big ups and downs of running backs. Last year was a running back explosion, but the years prior to that were not very kind to that running back position, especially when we see guys like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley both hit free agency. You see how it ends up. So James Cook could be the next one of those guys. I don't really see the Bills treating this with super urgency right now, though.
Yeah, this is a guy in James Cook that's going to want a lot of money next season. And I think this is one of those times we've seen a bunch in the history in the NFL, especially recently, where guys, when it's their contract year, they step up their play big time. I expect James Cook to have a big time year in Buffalo this year. I think they're going to utilize him a bunch in Buffalo, especially losing out on Stephon Diggs, having a little bit of a weaker wide receiver core. I think they're going to utilize the run game big time, and I could see him having 1,000 yards easily this year in Buffalo, as long, God forbid, he doesn't get hurt, and climb closer to that top 7 running back mark.
Yeah, for sure. The last big hold-in, Micah Parsons. We touched on him a little bit when we were talking about Trey Hendrickson over there, but there is some really interesting quotes, kind of a battle of words between him and Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones has said, we don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy, but Jerry Jones also has paid everybody that he wants to pay over the history of the Cowboys. Really, ever since he's taken over, they get these ones done. They take a long time. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb in recent memory, Ezekiel Elliott also in recent memory. All of these guys got their extensions a lot more expensive than they would have been if Jerry had just paid them right away. Kind of the theme of extensions in the NFL here. But Micah Parsons is arguably the best defensive player in the league right now. Arguably, he is. I think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year this season as a contract year. Just hey, screw you, Jerry, for not paying me. Now you got to pay me $45 million because I got this. But also, he said he's there for his teammates. He's a good teammate. He's a leader in that locker room, in that organization. With a new head coach, he knows he has to be there. He's showing up. He's showing out. I expect them to get a deal done at some point, but it's a really interesting hold-in versus hold-out situation with these different players, and something definitely to keep an eye on over there around the league. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, quarterback rooms to keep an eye on in the NFL, as well as much more. That's next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by my friend and co-host, Mehrob Fatemi over there. If you're just tuning in, we just finished going over all of the holdout news from around the NFL. We are live right now on YouTube and Twitch at 3 Threat Show, at Triple Threat Show. You can find us on all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere you get your podcasts. Go check us out. Give us a follow over there if you have not yet. But in this segment, we're going to finish off our NFL talk with a little bit of quarterback battles to watch in camp. There's 3 or 4 rooms that I think are really interesting to watch here, Mehrob. And I'm going to start off with one that we kind of got an answer to today. Brian Dable came out and said, Russell Wilson is the starter. There hasn't been too much of a competition. That's kind of been the expectation going through. But with such a crowded quarterback room, him, Jameis, and the rookie Jackson Dart, not to mention Tommy DeVito thrown in there just for fun, right? You've got a crowded quarterback room that I don't think is so cut and dry as Russell Wilson being the starter. Now, I think he has the highest floor. Out of all of those guys, he is the safest option for the Giants to win football games. But that isn't necessarily what I think is going to happen. Jackson Dart, of course, the more intriguing name, but also they bring in Jameis Winston. And if you want an insurgence of energy, that is your guy right there. If you want a fun football team, that is your guy right there. And as a Giants fan, that's the guy I kind of want to see for a season that I don't expect much out of. But for a team trying to win games, I understand where you're coming from Russell Wilson. We saw videos of practice for the first time. Jackson Dart's first throw, pick 6. Not necessarily the greatest start to your NFL practice career, but it happens. There's growing pains over there. This is going to be one that I expect Russell Wilson to hold the job throughout all of camp. But as the season goes on, if there's struggles, especially early on, this is one where I think his leash is the shortest of all starting quarterbacks in the league as we sit right now. What's your thoughts on that Giants quarterback room?
Yeah, the Giants QB room is definitely something we need to watch throughout the season. I'm right there with you that I think Russell Wilson is one of those guys. I think he's going to be the guy through at least the first 6 or 7 weeks of the regular season, unless something drastic happens. If he plays incredibly poorly in the first 4 weeks, I could see him getting pulled then. But I could see him being the starter for the first half of the season. Jameis Winston, I could see him coming in and getting a couple wins. He's one of those he's very sporadic with how he plays. Sometimes he's incredibly good. You can see him being an incredible game manager, delivering good throws. Then other times you can see that turnover problem starting to rear its head a little bit. So I could see him coming in, and then of course there is the possibility of Jackson Dart. I could see Jackson Dart being the third string quarterback out of the 3 guys. I just think he's a younger guy, so you can't really judge the way he's going to play, especially the fact that he's going to be riding the bench for the most part this year. But I could see him being a strong quarterback coming off the bench, being a third stringer, learning from Russell Wilson, learning from Jameis Winston, and just kind of learning from veteran experience ahead of him.
So that's the point that I think is really interesting about this Giants quarterback room in particular. It's not like the Browns quarterback room that we'll get to in a second, where you have a whole bunch of rookies. You have one rookie that specifically you traded up into the first round to get, right? That is a lot of assets, and that is a lot of faith saying you are our guy. And especially in a season like we've been saying, like everyone around the media has been saying, probably a lost year. Why go all in on a Jackson Dart in the draft if you're not going to play him? If you're going to put him as a third string, a guy that's going to sit, presumably if everything goes perfect, for a full season, why trade for him? Why move up in the draft and get him if you expect Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, who you both signed before, so you signed both before the draft, to be your guy? It makes no sense. I don't understand what that front office coaching staff is doing unless they expect Jackson Dart to come in and play at some point, which, if you're going to make that pick, you kind of got to hope he does, right?
Yeah. You kind of got to hope that he comes into training camp and that he kind of woes some people, that he turns some heads. I also think, well, to give the Giants credit a little bit, give them the benefit of the doubt. There was a lot of pressure on the organization to draft a quarterback. You still have Malik Neighbors sitting out there. You have Tyrone Tracy, who did pretty well this past season. You needed a game managing esque quarterback, and yes, you can get that from veteranship. You can get that from Russell Wilson. You can get that from a Jameis Winston. But you can also do that getting a rookie quarterback. The last time they drafted a quarterback was Daniel Jones, though, at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you kind of got to, you wanted to turn the page on Daniel Jones. You wanted to get some new age, some new recruits over there, a future quarterback in the system to start growing. And that's what I think they did with Jackson Dart. Was it the right move? I still think that they kind of reached for a quarterback in a class that really wasn't very quarterback heavy. And I don't really love that pick. So I'm right there with you about that. But in terms of learning from veterans, in terms of learning from a Super Bowl champion in Russell Wilson, a future Hall of Famer most likely, I think they didn't make. I don't think there was a wrong move in terms of drafting Jackson Dart. It's a risk, and in Giants history, risks don't usually pan out.
Oh, you brought up risks. You brought up the Giants, and I mean, Daniel Jones, right? That brings us to maybe the most intriguing quarterback room, at least in my opinion, of any of them. And that's the Indianapolis Colts. You have Daniel Jones, flamed out in New York, got that massive contract after winning a playoff game. Shout out Giants winning a playoff game over there. But they also have Anthony Richardson, who is so polarizing. I want Anthony Richardson to succeed so badly because you see his potential, his upside every time he does something insane, but he can't do the easy stuff. He can't do the short throws. He can't do the no pressure throws, but what he can do is he can run backwards 20 yards, jump, do a twist, a whole front flip, and then launch that ball about 80 yards downfield right into a bucket, right? He has this insane ability to do these insane things that almost no one in the history of football has even come close to being able to do. And yet he can't do the simple things. He also has issues staying healthy. That's the other big thing. So Daniel Jones, at least on the first day of training camp, granted he's healthy and Anthony Richardson not fully healthy, is looking better. There's been a couple drills where they're working side by side, and Daniel Jones is completing these open field passes, no pressure, no anything, and we're seeing Anthony Richardson struggle. This is the final call for Anthony Richardson. If it does not work out for him right now, he is out of the league. He is not really going to get another chance. There's no reason, I think, for a team to take another chance on him as a guy that's been nothing but a failure. Might be a little too harsh, but he hasn't been a success in any way, shape, or form at the NFL level, even really at the college or high school level. He wasn't nothing more than pure potential. But eventually, potential runs out. Eventually, you need results. And Anthony Richardson entering his third year in the NFL despite battling injuries and only playing about one season of NFL games, you do need to show some results. And it's do or die, sink or swim for Anthony Richardson this season. I don't know how it's going to go, though. I'm not too optimistic.
Yeah, this is an Anthony Richardson that I honestly am right there with you. I had a lot of hope going to when he came into the league, a number 4 overall pick, 6'4", almost 250. Cam Newton-esque build, a little bit shorter, but Cam Newton-esque. Could run, was elusive, was big, could break through tackles. We saw him as the next generation, or the next generation of the mobile quarterback. But it just hasn't panned out with injuries. And I'm just so happy that you brought up his inability to make those short throws, those incompletions. His completion percentage was atrocious in the NFL, not being able to make those easy throws. I felt like every time I turned on a Colts game, it's just an open guy on the corner just trying to catch a ball to the sidelines, and it just goes through his hands, or it goes over its head, or it's 4 yards past him. It was just short. It just felt like he was just off for whatever reason. And then the injuries took its toll as well. He's right now he's out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. When he comes back, will he come back? That's yet to be seen. But yeah, I'm right there with you. This is their last. This is their last stand, and I would not be shocked. Well, I would hope if I'm a Colts fan that they draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft in 2026.
It's a shame because, like you said, he has all the potential in the world, but it really is not working. One of the other quarterback rooms that I thought is going to be interesting, and it's one that we're obviously going to circle back to when we have more news about who the actual starter is. I think the only true one where it's kind of up in the air, other than the Colts, it's the Browns. The Browns, like I said, we were going to talk about in a little bit, of course, have Shedeur Sanders. They have Dylan Gabriel. They have Joe Flacco. They trade for Kenny Pickett. Those are four guys that, well, if I'm being completely honest with you, similar-ish level for me. You're talking about a nearly 40-year-old Joe Flacco. You're talking about a third and a fifth round quarterback. I don't think, I don't think all of these guys should have fallen as far as they did, but it's a really interesting situation, especially when you talk about the fame of a guy like Shedeur Sanders over there, right? It makes it even more complicated. The news coming out seems to be Shedeur Sanders is doing a lot better than Dylan Gabriel, but it's way early in camp right now. What are you hearing about this Browns quarterback room? How do you think it plays out?
Yeah, I think we're in agreement that Joe Flacco's most likely going to get the starting nod by the time the season starts. I think that's a no-brainer. But after that, if Joe Flacco starts to struggle, if Joe Flacco gets injured possibly, which he has the last couple years or so, who do they put in? Is it a Gabriel? Is it Shedeur Sanders? Is it possibly Kenny Pickett? I think right now, from what I've seen so far through training camp, it looks like Shedeur Sanders has the lead. He's done. If you just look up his throws so far in training camp, he's had some great throws. He's made some great plays, and they're on camera. They're right there for everyone to see. Of course, being on the live stage, being in a game is a much different scenario than just camp, just throwing against the practice squad. And we're going to learn a lot more about these quarterbacks once preseason starts. But for now, I would say it's definitely Shedeur Sanders in that second spot. I was a little bit hesitant on him just because of his size. I thought his size would be a little bit of an issue, kind of like how Kyler Murray is. Even though Kyler Murray hasn't had a whole lot of success so far in the NFL. But we'll see what happens. We're gonna stay optimistic here, and I'd say just wait out until preseason comes out, and we'll make a decision then to see how everything looks.
All right. In the YouTube comments, Caleb Carney says QB1 Dylan Gabriel over there, which as fun as that would be, I feel like he is lagging behind the rest of them when it comes to the quarterback position in Cleveland. I think it's probably honestly a battle between Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders, the way that everything's coming out. Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett, no shade to him, right? We love Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett over there, but he is, I think, pretty clearly the odd man out. What I've heard is it's a battle between the veterans and the rookies. One of those guys is going to be the starter. The other one is going to be the backup. It's a battle between Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. Joe Flacco probably going to win that one, and a battle between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. It seems like Shedeur Sanders is taking the lead, so I expect that to be the 1-2 quarterback combination from what I've heard, but a near 40-year-old Joe Flacco, who had a pretty bad season with the Colts last year, despite having a really good run with the Browns in limited playing time just 2 seasons ago, leading them to a playoff spot. I don't really see that working out long term. And especially with a guy as big as Shedeur Sanders, we're going to see a lot of clamoring for him if it does not work out with Joe Flacco. And I'm curious how quick that is going to go. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the WNBA. Some big news coming out of the All-Star break between them, especially with arguments about whether or not they should get paid as much as, or at least more than they are right now. That's coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. We are your hosts, Jeremy Lapidus and Mehrob Fatemi over there. If you're just tuning in, we just finished going over a couple of quarterback battles around the NFL that could be very interesting as training camp has officially started. In this segment, we're going to finish off our show talking a little bit about the WNBA, of course, back in the news, not necessarily because of basketball, but because of everything else surrounding it. A recent controversy after WNBA players showed up to the All-Star game wearing shirts saying we should get paid as much as NBA players, in less words, right? They went out there and they made their point known. And this is the reaction that I saw to this, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Rob, but it's not what I expected from the general public. I know the idea of women's sports isn't necessarily the most popular amongst all people, which stupid, but I guess they can have their opinions sometimes. This is one of those things where I think people aren't taking the context of sports league startups into consideration. One of the things that I think is the most important thing when we're talking about when I hear people say, oh, these guys don't deserve more money because they haven't turned a profit, the WNBA is about 30 years old at this point. The NBA, I know before my lifetime and before yours, Rob, but the NBA was really struggling until Larry Bird and Magic Johnson showed up. They were about to go under until Larry Bird and Magic Johnson showed up, and that was 40 years into their existence, 10 more years than the WNBA has existed. Now we know the NBA as a massive juggernaut. Basketball, world popular, the NBA, the best place to go to watch that stuff. But the WNBA players asking for equal pay is not this crazy, ridiculous thing, right? These are people that are doing the exact same jobs. These are people that are getting paid like less than, they're not even getting six figures right now. They're making $70,000, $80,000, right? This is not enough. These are guys that when we're paying athletes, they deserve to get paid the same. And I don't honestly understand the pushback that a lot of people are giving it. And maybe that's more political than we like to get here on sports talk shows, but it's one of these things that who cares if the game is a little bit different. It offers its own kind of positives and negatives that's different from the NBA. You're not going to see these rim rattling dunks, but what you are going to see is this game expand. And we're seeing players like Sabrina Ionescu, like Paige Beckers, like Caitlin Clark that are starting to bring the game further and further along. It's passed on. Sue Bird of the last generation, Diana Taurasi of the last generation, these guys that have carried the game to the next generation. It's going to keep growing because the product is good and it's getting better. These players deserve to get paid a livable wage, right? And with athletes, the way that they're getting paid nowadays, I'm not talking about getting hundreds of millions of dollars, but start to get closer to that number. Inch towards it every year. The WNBA is only getting more popular as players get more popular on social media, as they get more traction. But it feels like the people that are on the other side of this argument for me are saying it more as a I hate women argument rather than they don't deserve to get paid. Your
That's the
thoughts?
truth. No doubt, Jeremy. That is the truth right there. I honestly, it's hard to come back and give my thoughts after that because that was a phenomenal speech right there. But because that's the truth. They're trying to compare. It's literally just a comparison of men or bolstering, not even comparison, because a comparison would be a question. It's just pretty much a bolstering of women are trying to do what men are trying to do. That's not what's happening. Women are trying to do the same sport, but they're not trying to do the same thing. They're trying to be competitive and they're trying to do the same thing in their own sport. It's just unfortunate that the NBA came before the WNBA, that the NBA are the conglomerates and supposed to be the quote unquote superpower of that sport, of basketball. And that's just what it is. And the WNBA is trying to create their own spot. Um, I'm there for it that the women should get paid as much as NBA, no doubt about it. I just think we just need to give them time. I think they have some blossoming superstars. Angel Reese is going to be a blossoming superstar. Obviously, Caitlin Clark is trailblazing the sport. Diana Taurasi, across the board, there are so many athletes that are being overlooked just because they're sitting in the men's shadows and nobody can look past it. And that's the state of affairs in the WNBA right now. We just need to give them time. We just need to give them time to grow. It's just like a plant. You got to give a plant time to grow before you see it. It's sitting in the shade, but just give it some time. It'll be fine. And these players are doing the right thing. They're fighting for their rights right now, and eventually it'll all make sense. It'll all work out. It'll all make sense when it's all said and done.
Right, absolutely. And this comes as the WNBA just negotiated CBAs. And this happens everywhere. Baseball is about to have a holdout because their players and their owners could not be further apart on some very important issues when that CBA runs out. It happens every single time. In the NBA as well, CBA negotiation gets tense. We've seen holdouts. They're trying to get their money. They're trying to get that revenue split. And they're not doing anything that any other sports league hasn't done. They're just trying to get paid as equals because at the end of the day, they're just playing a sport and they deserve to be paid that same kind of percentage, that 50-50 split, 51-49 split that a lot of other leagues do around, especially America. But we're going to leave it on that note. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Triple Threat Show. We have been your hosts, Jeremy Lapidus and Mehrob Fatemi over there. We will be back on Friday. Big baseball show. We'll talk about trade deadline. That is next Thursday. Keep your eye out for that. MLB power rankings, as we do each and every single Friday, and much more. We'll be back. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.